I joined the spring of '66. My parents didn't have much money. My dad was an automobile mechanic. My mom, a bureaucrat for the state. And they took what money they had to help me get into Arizona State. I wasn't ready. I wasn't mature enough to do well in college. And I started dropping out. The second semester was pretty obvious that I wasn't going to make it. I couldn't deal with the prerequisites. All my friends were already in the Marine Corps. Some of them were already in NAM. I wanted to be with my friends to help. That seemed like the right thing to do. Kind of like you with you got a bunch of friends going into a fight and you want to be there with them.
At that time, what did the conflict in Vietnam mean to you?
I didn't know what it was really. I mean, I knew there was a war going on. And I lived in a very conservative neighborhood. My neighbors were Irish and Italian. So, and the VFW was a big thing. The American Legion was a big thing. You can go to a bar on Friday nights and hear about all the heroics of World War II. So joining the military was, an acceptable way to proceed from high school. I think my parents themselves, especially my mom, was worried that something would happen to me to the war or that something potentially could. But my dad won a Purple Heart in World War II. He was a Navy Seabee on Guadalcanal.
When you joined the Marine Corps, did you know that you would go to Vietnam? I mean, was that an assumption of yours?
Yeah, it
Uh,
was if I didn't, I was pretty sure. I was only in the Marine Corps for 2 years.
mm.
So since all my friends were Marines, I I joined the Marine Corps.
And did you want to go to Vietnam?
No, I can't say I wanted to go into Vietnam. No, I know that at the time, the war was getting bigger and bigger. I mean, it was at with a 2 year enrollment. They weren't going to spend much time educating me. My friends went in for 4 years. They went in the air wing. They wanted to go in the air wing. Well, with 2 years, the only thing they're going to do is put you through infantry training and send you to Nam. I mean, it became very clear as soon as I made it to boot camp.
That you were going to Vietnam. Um, what was your first impression of Vietnam?
Strange, beautiful country. Landing, it was a beautiful country, and I couldn't believe how different the customs were. I was in this. We landed. They put us in a truck to take us to our unit. We hadn't had weapons yet, and we were looking out the side of the truck, looking at villages and the women carrying goods on their heads, men with poles with bags on the end, all in black pajamas, armed soldiers holding hands with each other. That I found out was that's what Bet's friends did in Vietnam. But I think my love for the country really came during Whole Watch when you would see this farmer. Typically, a farmer had four fields of rice, all in a different stage, where one would be almost dry, where he just planted seeds, and one may have you know 10 inches of water, and then the third one might have greens up 3 feet, and then the fourth one you couldn't even see the greens because it was covered with water. And he would take that pole with the two little funnels and he would stand on the dike and he would take the water from one field and pour it into the next. And that's what he and his son did all day long. They'd get water from one field to the next until all four fields were completely covered. And the patience that must have taken. Um, and I don't know, I had so much admiration for the Vietnamese people. You
Hmm.
know, even the enemy. When our base was attacked during Operation Arizona, and we're down to nobody, absolutely nobody. I'm in the operations bunker. I'm doing my job. I'm doing Captain Biddle's job. I'm helping the radio operators because they need to leave for a shower every now and then. Anyway, so I go to mess hall and there's nobody there. I'm leaving the mess hall, and then all hell breaks out. I mean, machine guns, traces, M4, M47s, M16s, blasting away all over. And I'm like down on the ground, and they're all just, it's like not being fired at anything in particular. They just fill the sky. And that's when the supply sergeant is running with a couple of guys from a KP, catch up with me, and they say, you're in our squad now. We're going out to get them. And what these couple of VC did was they found these ravines that were between the 7th Engineers and us, and basically kind of shot at the holes at each side and then got the two units to fire at each other. So
Hmm.
all this machine gun firing and all the traces were all coming from the 7th Engineers, and our sides were all shooting back the same way. And we were supposed to go out in the middle of all of it and find out who was doing the sniper shooting. To me, that was ridiculous, you know? I mean, there's so many orders that were ridiculous. Okay, stop shooting on both sides. Wait till you see somebody shooting in the middle. Okay, and call it an airstrike.
Hmm. Was this for you? Was this an example of how clever the enemy was?
It was an example. If you want to go back to one of the major problems of the Vietnam War, one of the major problems was it had this 13-month rotation. Okay? So every time you did something, you were a conglomeration of duty rosters from all over the base. So instead of having one platoon that has worked together for 12 months go out and do something, you now have a squad that's been put together by people on KP and people here and people there because they're on the duty roster for the night. So you continually find you're in a squad with an objective with people you've never met before. That was the closest I think I ever came to losing my life was during that because there was a time when not only both sides were opening up, but we were hitting. There was no place to hide. We were hitting flat ground, and I swear to God, I could see puffs of smoke. You know, you just see, you hear it's all so much noise, but then you see puffs of smoke inches from my body where AK-47s, shot from. That was my experience in the war, you know. We were dealing with one and two very smart snipers, very smart Vietnamese, but we weren't dealing with main units of NVA. It wasn't like being up north in the DMZ. Operation DeSoto 2 was earlier on in the war. It was when we were still dropping leaflets over all the villages and telling them we were coming. So the leaflets were in the hope that the Vietnamese would turn in their weapons uh, for some kind of deal, money, reward. But basically, um, we wanted you guys to fight on our side and leave the Viet Cong, and here we're giving you an incentive. But basically, all what they did was they told the Vietnamese that we were coming. And we came, 3-5 had the main sweep, and we came in to assist, and there was companies of Arvins. It was a multi-battalion operation. So now my perspective, which was really only what I could see through the company of my own men. Where we have the job of running a block for 3-5, meaning blocking positions. They're going to come in the center. If the VC try and escape out the sides, we'll be there to block them. But we're on a trail, and this trail isn't 18 inches wide. So I don't know how you defend anything. So now you got 300 Marines, 15 yards apart, creating a 5-mile snake down this 18-inch wide trail. And then we stop at a clearing and there's a river. And nobody thinks that this is, like right during the monsoons. And this river is feeding one of the main rivers in Da Nang. So we got at the field, and the river was at the narrowest point, which made it the wildest, roughest point. But the jungle was thick, and the captain made us cross, and they got a rope on the other side, tied it around a tree, made it taut, pulled it to our side, did the same thing. And we were told to go one by one, about 3 feet apart, and cross the river. Well, you couldn't see it. You could hear it, but you couldn't even see the river until you were like, the jungle was here and you were right there. But when you did see it and you look left and right, the first thing out of my head is fucking nuts, because we got 20 feet in either direction. We got an easier pass.
Mm.
But that's what they did. And I had never experienced anything like it. I grabbed the rope. I have a heavy backpack. My rifle's on my shoulder. I take the first step in 3 inches of water, and my body just goes horizontal, totally horizontal. And you're trying to crash this rope and go over hand in hand, and your body is just totally horizontal. I mean, it's pushing that hard,
Wow.
and you got a lot of weight. I got big hands, and I was lucky I made it to the other side. But I swear I wasn't 3 feet from the other side, and it was a slippery, muddy other side. And you would have to take the rifle off your shoulder to hand it to him, which meant you were only holding the rope with one hand, which made it more dangerous. And it was during that act that the man behind me slipped and just gone. He went down the rail. He just slipped. It was so close. I mean, he was like right there. And for years, I still today, I wonder if it was possible to ever have grabbed him. And then realizing I would have went down with him. There was no question I would have went down with him, because I could barely hold on with one hand, no less a person that was already moving. But he went down, he was gobbled up the river, and I'm holding now. I'm scared. I'm looking at him, and he's underwater, he's above water, then he's around the bend. And then I hand my rifle to one of the guys on the on the shore, and he slips down because it's all mud, and he's trying to hand me. One guy got his hand on my backpack, one guy had his hand on my wrist, and then the next guy behind me also lost it and went right down the river. They pulled me up, and I am more exhausted than I've ever been in my life. And I can't, it was, it was unbelievably scary because you're in this position and the crossing took 20 minutes, maybe in reality, 15, 20 minutes. So it's not like when I was telling you about being shot at, the being shot at was like seconds, you know. You don't even hear it. You see the piffs of dust. But this was, nature trying to kill you slowly.
Mhm.
Um, it was very scary. And then the officers, they knew we were done, and we just camped on the other side of the bank that night.
Were either of the two Marines who went into the river ever found? Were they found?
I'm not sure. Um, I am not sure. There was, I, they never came back to our group. I'll say that much.
You were there for the transition from the M14 to the M16, and you experienced the problems that came with the
Ugh.
M16. So talk about that. What were the problems with the M16?
Other than it being a piece of shit, it was a plastic piece of shit. Well, it was all done in a hurry. And we were coming back from DeSoto too. We hadn't had a chance to test it, to look at it. They took away our M14, gave us the M16. M16 had a little switch on the side that you could put on single shot or automatic. Um, we didn't have any cleaning equipment. We got notes that it should be cleaned 6 times. Um, we tried it. It didn't work on it. It would shoot 2, 3 rounds and jam. On single shot, it wasn't bad. It worked. Okay. Unless you pressed it and you hit the trigger fast and then it would jam. It wasn't trusted. It wasn't liked. Um, for the longest time, uh, the way it was introduced was just wrong. It's war itself, if it was in the States, you'd go to a lecture, you'd learn about the weapon, you'd hear about it, you'd take it to the range, you'd test it, blah, blah, blah. Not in Vietnam. In Vietnam, they just say, here it is. We want your M14, you know? And that's it. No testing, no instructions, no nothing. Um, it took about 3 or 4 months to determine why it was jamming. And the Pentagon did that. But apparently it was just too fast for its own good. And they put a rubber bumper in the stock, and that slowed down enough so that the bolt coming back uh, wouldn't be too fast, and the mechanical spring of the round going up would log into place. But during those 4 months of not having a reliable weapon was very, very hard on the infantrymen.
Well, right. Is that because they felt, I mean, this is the most basic tool you have, and the most basic tool you have doesn't work. And I mean, it almost must feel like being abandoned or something.
Well, it's all of that. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the abandonness was on every level, on every level. We were never told why we were going or where we were going or what would we be doing. You go back to Operation Perry and talk about it, ridiculously dumb operation. We're airlifted to this rock cropping and we don't leave for 3 days. We don't leave 5 feet for 3 days because of the weather, because you can get hypothermia at 70 degrees, you know? So you have to ask yourself, did whoever initiated this operation, did they not think about this? Did they not tell us, bring warmer clothing? None of it.
Sure. Wow. Were you aware of, or did you hear about Marines using other weapons? You hear about Marines using AK-47s, you hear about Marines using
Well,
their own weapons and
right
things.
at after the transition, yeah, after the transition, there was a lot of scuttlebutt, a lot of people wanting to send home for their own weapons, a lot of people who had captured AK-47s were cleaning them to use. One of the things, I mean, the Viet Cong outfoxed us every which way and can. Even if you think about the weapons, the M, the AK-47 can shoot ammunition from the M16, but the M16 cannot shoot ammunition from the AK-47 because the ammunition from the AK-47 was just slightly larger, just enough that it couldn't be used. On night patrols, we would find American-made Claymore mines. I was walking down a trail in the base and came across a bear trap, an old metal bear trap. How the hell do you get a bear trap in Vietnam? I mean, it's like you're ready to, but just this is
But,
beyond
but
ridiculousness.
the bear trap to capture a Viet Cong? Was that the idea?
It was, we had these little trails that were 18 inches wide that you would have to walk along to get from the mess hall or the flick to where you lived, to get to where you lived to the operation bunker. Everything was kind of on little hills, and the connections were these little trails. And sometimes you'd be on a trail, and the drop off to the jungle on one side was 5, 6 feet. And then there's just a wall of green on your other side. And that bear trap was like, boom, right in the middle of the trail. I don't know who left it, who it was for, why. On the same token, people don't believe me on this, but it's totally true. I came across a tiger. I mean, I'm coming home from the flick and staring straight at me is probably an adolescent. I'm guessing it couldn't have weighed 200 pounds, 225 pounds. But a tiger, face to face. And this is inside the base. Somewhere in September, October, the 1st Marine Division announced what we called the big invasion, which was hilarious. This was some general's idea, division general, where we would open fire, all holes would open fire, all artillery would fire, illumination would fire. Even my friend at Mag 16 had to take barrels and fill them with and put things in fire so they would smoke for an imaginary enemy that they would hope would see all of this and then attack Da Nang. The notion was that there was NVA and Viet Cong in the fields in the mountains, and the assumption was that the communication between their units were either non-existent or poor. And if we could create a scene that looked like Da Nang was being invaded, then those smaller groups would try to join the larger groups and possibly join the attack on Da Nang. And while those smaller groups were joining the larger groups, all the ambushes that we put out there would be able to annihilate them. That
So
was the theory. It never worked, but it was humorous and it just showed you, I mean, it was the epitome of the masterminds of the military trying to deal with this war that they had no idea how to deal with.
the end of your tour in Vietnam comes right at the time of the Tet Offensive. So what memories do you have of the Tet Offensive?
Well, we we were really, to begin with, prior to Tet, we have no idea. We were getting intelligence report, but you can look back in history now and say how the Tet offensive, was such a big deal. We really didn't know. We were kept in the dark. The only thing that we knew is we did get reports that way was overrun. And we did get reports. We were there to watch that rockets, 200 and something rockets landed at the Da Nang Air Base, and Marble Mountain was mortared. Um, so we were scared. We were not so scared about like getting shot at that moment. We were all worried that we were going to have to go up, they were going to move up north to Way to help retake Way. That was our concern. Um, the enemy at that time appeared to be going for bigger fish. We were a small battalion on the outskirts. Um, their rockets couldn't even hit us. And then got pissed because my flight orders to go home were right during Tet, and they closed the Da Nang Air Base. So, I was my, my 13-month tour is turning into 14 months, and I'm pissed, I'm angry. But in all honesty, there was nothing that we saw that I could say that 227 was an objective. It didn't appear like it was an objective. They were out there, our patrols were instigating more firefights on patrols, um, but they weren't attacking our base. We were Nobody told us where we were going. We were told to carry everything, you know, weapons, your magazines, your rifle belt, everything. Wherever you go on base, you go to eat, you got everything. You go to wherever you work because we could be moving out in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But as far as the 2-7 base, we really never got any more than sniper fire during the whole time I was there. And I left during Tet. I mean, the airport opened and I left in early March. When I returned to the States, I was euphoric. I mean, I can't even tell you. It was no drug could make you feel this way, and you could talk about people who say live for the moment. But this was not only living for the moment, it was living for the moment with so much awareness about everything that was taking place. And it took almost 4 years for that erotic feeling to start wearing off. But I could drive my car to the grocery store to pick up a carton of milk for my mom, and I would be in awe at watching kids mow grass, at a bird taking off a telephone line. It was just so much beauty. And I can only attribute that I really did think I was going to die in Vietnam. And when I got home, every day was a brand new life, a wonderful brand new life. And I wish there was some way we could capture that. I wish there was some way we could live where that would continue.